Happy Friday, everyone. Welcome to Daily Delivery. I am Michael Rand. Lots to get to today. I got Mark Craig coming up with NFL picks and a long conversation with Mike Hastings, head coach of Minnesota State Mankato hockey. Big series for them this weekend against St. Cloud State, number 1 against number 2. Good early test for college hockey. Just a good series and a good lay of the land for where that program is in this state. So we'll get to both of those things in just a minute. But first, what did I miss? You guys, that's why we watched the games, was Thursday night. Saw two things. One of them I don't know if I've ever seen. The other you don't see these days at all. Let's start with the straight steal of home. Randy Arozarena of the Tampa Bay Rays, leading candidate for Rookie of the Year, had a great postseason last year already, even though he was had barely had any regular season at bats. Stole home against the Red Sox. Did a straight steal, just timed it perfectly. First straight steal of home plate since 1955 in the postseason. Jackie Robinson did it against Yogi Berra, that famous play. You've probably seen replays of that. But just the fact that he was able to pull this off, that did it in a playoff game, and they had a decent-sized lead. They won 5-0, I believe. That was maybe the final run in the game. So, there was a certain cushion, there was a certain ability for him to do it. He made it relatively easy, and relatively easily, and it was just, what an exciting play. Like, just that just doesn't happen these days. Pitchers are so conscious of what's going on at third base, but when you get a lefty on the mound and he can't look right over there, and even if he's in the stretch, if he's doing a long stretch, you have an opportunity if you time it right and you catch a team napping, and that is exactly what happened in that game. Now, the other thing I was referencing, a little bit more on the bizarre side, Michael Dickson for Seattle Seahawks was punting. The Seahawks were down 16-7. Russell Wilson had injured his finger in that game. Things were going terribly for Seattle. Punt gets blocked against the Rams, and Dickson goes and scoops up the loose ball and runs a little bit, sees that he's not going to be able to make the first down, and then he punts it again, a double punt, and they threw a flag, but then they talked about it and realized it was a legal play. He was barely behind the line of scrimmage still, and the rule says that as long as the ball doesn't cross the line of scrimmage, in a situation like that, you can kick it again. So ball ends up going like 68 yards. Ends up being like a 68-yard punt. Ends up being, could have been a key play in the game if Seattle had been able to rally. They ended up losing 26-17, but what an amazing heads-up play. Scooped it up with one hand, double punt in that game. Never seen that before. Don't know if I ever will, but, a double punt and a straight steal of home, that is why we watch sports today.
Since I was a kid, my grandpa, Jim Warner, taught us to treat our customers like family. And to thank you for 67 years, Warner Stellian is offering unbeatable appliance savings. Go to WarnerStellian.com to get your $50 coupon you won't find anywhere else.
It's NFL picks time on Daily Delivery. Mark Craig joins me, as always, on Fridays. Mark, how you doing?
Doing well. How are you?
I'm pretty good. You looking over your week 5 picks, and Mark, your tempting fate. You're putting Vikings Nation on notice, saying this is a breeze. What do you got? The Vikings by like 3.5 touchdowns in this game over Detroit. I know Detroit's bad, but man, the Vikings can lose or win against anybody in my estimation.
Well, yeah, I think anybody in the league. It's a crazy league, as you know, Michael. But yeah, I got it. It might be the all-time jinx that I'm throwing out there, but because I call this the lock pick. I have a feeling. First of all, I think the Vikings are obviously a lot better. They're at home. They're playing a quarterback that can't move and an offensive line that can't protect him, and they can't rush the passer. So, to me, this is it's a lock. I think I had 31-7.
31-7, yeah.
It's a get right game, but if I'm wrong and they lose, it has a feel of I'm not saying it would happen, but this has a feel if you lose and get embarrassed by the Lions at home, it has a fire the coach feel to it. I don't think that'll happen, but because I think they'll win.
Yeah, you're right. I think it's an opportunity at the very least to get healthy, on the scoreboard at least. You never. I don't know if we would learn a whole lot about the Vikings if they do take care of business, even in a routine kind of pedestrian way, even if it was more like 27-14 or something like that. If it was just a simple win, I still don't know how much we would learn because the Lions are pretty bad. That said, the Lions, even at 0-4, I've watched bits and pieces of these games. They're a little bit more functional than I thought they would be. I mean, that first half against Green Bay, you talked about them last week having, good halves of football. That's a little bit of what just gives me pause this week. But, the Vikings are clearly the better team.
And obviously, having said that, like I have mentioned, I think a couple times on the show that they've done some nice things. They don't look like the typical Lions. They had the Ravens beat and get beat by a record field goal. I picked them, like an idiot. I picked them for my upset special last week. But they were inside the red zone 4 or 5 times, and 4 of them, they had 2 fumbles. Goff got stripped of the ball twice, and they turned the ball over on downs twice. So, and that a lot of that happened early in the game. So they score there a couple of times. It might be a different game.
Yeah, it's a crazy league, like you say, but if everything goes according to form, the Vikings will win this game, give themselves at least a chance to get back to 500 before the bye week. Staying in the division, Packers at Bengals is a little more interesting than it probably seemed at the start of the year. Bengals are 3-1. They've hardly played flawless football, but if we're living by the axiom that you are what your record is, that cuts both ways. They're 3-1, and offense has been pretty good with, Joe Burrow healthy. He's got some guys to throw to, including Jamar Chase, who had a big long touchdown against the Vikings in week 1. You think this is going to be it feels like this could be a high scoring game, like you write. But in a high scoring game, even in Cincinnati, you got to give the edge to Green Bay.
Yeah, I was so tempted to pick the Bengals in this one because I do think that it's weird that, first of all, that they're 3-1, and this is like one of the marquee games of the week. When's the last time you said that a marquee game is in Cincinnati with Aaron Rodgers going against Joe Burrow, and Jamar Chase is becoming like the modern version of Randy Moss. I mean, this way he's scoring and everything. To me, I was tempted to pick the Bengals. I fully expect it to be a real high scoring game, but I just, and I think the Bengals can rush the passers as we saw. But I just, I think in this type of game where Aaron Rodgers finds a way to score last and win.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think Green Bay has kind of got things rolling a little bit. Aaron Rodgers was right. They're 3-1 after that, after getting humiliated in week 1 against New Orleans. They're well on their way to being a good team again. Game of the week's got to be Bills against Kansas City. That's in Kansas City. You like Buffalo? I kind of like Buffalo too. I wonder if this is kind of a trap and that Buffalo has looked especially good because they've been playing some bad teams, and Kansas City will end up winning this game. But Buffalo looks like at the risk of jinxing Bills fans, Buffalo looks like it could be the team to beat in the AFC this year.
Yeah, I mean, I like what Sean McDermott and Leslie Frazier have done defensively. You're right. I mean, they've had the good fortune of winning 3 straight games against 3 backups quarterbacks in the NFL. I think I said, they're now facing the greatest non-backup quarterback that's maybe ever lived. So, to me, I picked the Bills in part, and I'm not sure. I wouldn't put money on any of this stuff, especially that game, because Kansas City, it's in Kansas City, and they can just score. And the Bills gave it 2 cracks last year, and they couldn't do it. And that AFC Championship game, they could not stop them. But where I hung my picking hat on was the turnovers and the 2 losses that Kansas City has had. I think in one of the losses, Mahomes had 4 interceptions. They had 4 turnovers. I like the way that the Bills are playing. I like their pass rush. I think is better than it was last year, which was the area they were really looking to improve on. And I like the fact that they turned the ball over, and I just feel like it's time for them to break through. Now, this could be a preview of the AFC Championship game, and they end up, the Chiefs end up winning that game. But I'm going against. Normally, I would pick the home team in a situation like this, but I'm going with the Bills just because I think they'll force some turnovers.
You get the Browns over the Chargers. It's a road game too. I like that one too. I think Cleveland impressed me more than I was ready to be impressed. Baker Mayfield's inaccuracy aside, I think we learned the other day he's got some kind of shoulder problem, although that's non-throwing shoulder that could still be impacting him a little bit. You do wonder how long it might be until we see some Case Keenum magic over there if he keeps struggling. But in some cases, like last week, it didn't really matter if he was inaccurate because the defense was that good and the run game is that good, and that could carry the day at San Diego again. I'm sorry, at the Chargers, at the LA Chargers again.
Yeah, I mean, for them to win last week, I know the Vikings are 1-3 and everything, but to come into that stadium, which they had never played in before, the amount of noise that there is, for them to come in and granted, most 99% of football fans today don't like the 14-7 game. I sort of enjoy the struggle. For them to win that game with that running game, that defense, and to be able to win when their quarterback is playing like a high school quarterback. I mean, that's the worst I've seen him play. And I tend to watch most of their games every week. He was awful, and he admitted it. And no one's going to argue with his description of how he played. But they just have a way, and that style, which is exactly how Zimmer would like to win. I mean, Zimmer would probably want his quarterback to play a little better than that, but that travels well. And, as we saw Monday night, going to LA, it can be the visiting team can be have the home crowd, have the crowd behind them. So it's not a tough place to play. It's never been a tough place to play. So I like how the Browns, their style travels, and you can control games the way the Browns play.
Let me ask you something kind of that I've sampled throughout the week with, I think, Chip and maybe even Royce. The way that game went last week, the 14-7 game, when the Vikings just couldn't protect Cousins, couldn't really get anything going on offense beside that first, touchdown drive. Is that a function more of Cleveland's front four and even the back half, or is it the Vikings offensive line? Like, should we expect a bounce back from the Vikings offensive line in more often than not this year, or because Cleveland's defense was so good, they made them look worse than they really are, or are you going to see continued struggles like that from the offensive line, do you think?
Well, I went in purposely looking at the pressure for the story that I was going to work on, that I worked on for Monday's paper. Kirk Cousins goes 6 for 6 on that first drive. There was not an ounce of pressure on him. The only pressure on that drive was whenever they got him to leave the pocket and he ran, 3 yards over the line of scrimmage before he threw the ball. But that drive took like 8 minutes off the clock, and then the Browns had a long drive. And then when the Vikings got the ball back, Kirk was pressured on his first 3 throws. And then I had him for 18 pressures after that. And that includes penalties and everything. 3 of those, and 1 came up the middle from Malik Jackson, which, up the middle is kind of a problem. That seems to be a recurring problem when the line breaks down. And the other, there was a safety blitz, I think, off the front side. And then there was a corner blitz off the blind side. So Joe Woods, I think, jump-started that, pressure by bringing some extra rushers. And then the front four seemed to get in rhythm. And I think the Vikings and Kirk Cousins may have become a little more hesitant because there was pressure coming from different areas. And then, the Myles Garrett of the world, those guys took over. So I think Joe Woods deserves some credit for how he jump-started, that pressure and putting things in the Vikings' head. The offensive line played really well 2 weeks in a row. 2 or 3 weeks in a row. But yeah, they're not going to be I don't think they're the line that's going to line up and play 10 straight games that we're going to be, lauding them for. It's going to be a bumpy ride with them. And to get good games out of them is nice, but it's not going to happen every single week.
Let's get to your upset special to finish this off. You got Bears fever all of a sudden just because they beat the Lions. You got them winning At Vegas 3-1, although Vegas didn't look that great last week.
Yeah, I might be the only guy that picked the Lions to beat the Bears in Chicago as my upset special, and then to come back and pick the Bears to win on the road as my upset special. So yeah, I don't feel as good about these as I did the first three, but Vegas they're very one dimensional. It seems so weird saying Vegas, but very one dimensional. I think the Bears defense stops the run. They get after Derek Carr. And Khalil Mack is obviously he might just go to the sideline and sack Gruden, so take some of that money that should have gone to him. So,
all right, Mark, sounds good. I appreciate all this, and we'll do this next week. Okay.
Thank you.
Just a bit of levity. I'll take you behind the show a little bit. During that segment with Mark Craig, I started to ask him about the Seahawks-Rams game, thinking what a great matchup that was, forgetting that we were recording the segment on Thursday, but it wasn't going to run till Friday, and that was the Thursday night game. Trust me, we both liked the Rams in that game. Mark Craig had it written down in his picks that the Rams would win and cover, so good one for Mark Craig. Really happy to be joined today on Daily Delivery by Mike Hastings, head coach, Minnesota State Mankato men's hockey team, first-time guest. Welcome to the show, Mike. How you doing?
Really good. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Wanted to talk ahead of a pretty big early series, at least. It's early October, so we can't get ahead of ourselves in terms of importance, but a good kind of early test. So some excitement in college hockey with number 1 against number 2, Minnesota State Mankato against St. Cloud in Mankato this weekend, Friday and Saturday. Maybe off the bat, I want to ask you a little bit about program stuff, but maybe you can zero in on that series for just a minute. Last year, such a strange year for everybody in sports. I've talked to a number of guests about that, especially as we kind of welcome fans back into the space, in the last couple months here. How do you think that series in particular will feel? Not just 1 versus 2, but, people in your building, energy, things like that.
It's something we're looking forward to. This last week, we went out to UMass, and right. They were unveiling their national championship banner. And, I guess we became a little numb to the idea of no fans in the building. And so as I was walking out with Todd Connaught, my associate head coach, and we're walking out to the bench, and we came through the tunnel and got out, and there was 9,000 people. It was sold out. As you just mentioned, the energy in the building, knock on wood, they didn't score a goal, so the top didn't get blown off that place. We were fortunate. We got one early and calmed the crowd a little bit, but boy, was it fantastic to be back in a building with fans, whether it was ours or somebody else's, just for the environment factor for the players. And sometimes you don't miss something until it's gone. And for us to experience that again, and now being able to flip the script and come home, and it looks like our place is going to be sold out for the weekend. And so when you start talking about environment, being back in the state of hockey, playing against a team that we know well, have a tremendous amount of respect for, I know the guys are excited about it. Put it this way, the ticket list for the players is full. So we're looking forward to it.
I bet you are. I'm looking forward to it too. It should be a fun early series. Like you mentioned, a team very well. Last weekend, like you said, a lot of success at UMass. That was a team that won the Frozen Four, won the national championship a year ago. You guys were in that Frozen Four. That was your first Frozen Four appearance. You get the sweep last weekend, which vaults you up into that number 1 ranking again this year. This is like 3 out of the last 4 years, 6 out of the last 9. You guys have been in the tournament. Like I said, made the Frozen Four for the first time last season. That kind of program building and ascent has roughly coincided with your arrival there. I believe you've been there 10 years, 11 years of somewhere in that mix. How, maybe just open-ended, kind of taking me back a decade. How did you do it? How has this become, not just a good team that, that might contend for, getting into the postseason sometimes, to number 1 team in the country, national championship contender?
Well, it's year 10, starting year 10. It seems like year 2. Time flies, I guess, as you keep getting older. It seems like it goes by faster, but really support from the top down. Now President Ench, we've got a new leader here at MSU. Previously, it was Richard Davenport, who hired me with Rick Straka, Kevin Weissman, our vice president, and our AD. And when I worked with Dean Blaze at UNO, he told me, he said, "Hey, if you're gonna be successful at a Division I institution, you need to have, a Division I hockey program. You need to have strong leadership above you and support." And that's been there since day one. We talked about trying to fill the facility void that we were looking to, so we could provide for the student athlete what they need to develop nutritionally, academically, strength and conditioning, as well as a place that they can call home. And the city, the state, the university stepped up. We've got a beautiful home that we get to be a part of every single day. So that has been taken care of. And then they did an unbelievable job at giving me an opportunity to hire who I thought we needed to hire and surround myself with great people. And Todd Connaught, my associate head coach, I think is one of the brightest minds in all college hockey. I think he'll be a head coach sooner than later. Decided to stick around with me. And Darren Blue, who just left our program this year, and now we've got Paul Kirtland, decided to stay also. And so there was some continuity from day one with a connection with the previous coaching staff, players. And then I'll say this, when I got here, I was fortunate to have good hockey players. And that makes, we had a good goaltender. We had some guys that could spin it around out in the rink, and guys that really wanted to take a step. And so when you have the ability to be surrounded by quality, you've got quality hockey players and have the support. They've been there since day one, and they've never gone away. And so it's allowed us to continue to climb the ladder, and hopefully we're going to stay on that ascent this season.
Speaking of this year's team in particular, I mean, like I said, you had the sweep at UMass, which is an impressive start. Might be too early to know this necessarily, but I'm sure you've done, plenty of roster dissection and thinking about this year's team. When this team is going well, when you're winning, what's this year's identity do you think is going to be? How will this year's team play when it is playing at its best?
Well, hopefully we can win with depth. And we still, it's, as you just mentioned, it's still early for us, but we're going to need our best players to be our best players, while some of our younger players develop their own identity as individuals, and then put that together as a group. But to start off, any good hockey team, any team that is successful consistently has good goaltending, and we're blessed. We've got Dryden McKay, who has done a lot, is very close to, with a shutout on Saturday against UMass, is close to tying and hopefully setting an NCAA record for shutouts in a career. And not just his play on the rink, but really his leadership off the rink. You start there, and then our defensive cores come back, and we need them. Over the last 5-6 years, we've done a really good job of buying into the we factor, not the me factor, and guys are okay defending in groups of 5, and it starts with our defensemen. And then we've got a couple of special players that had special weekends last weekend. Nathan Smith had 5 points on the weekend, had 3 goals. And when we were down 3-0 on Sunday, scored goal 1, goal 2, set up goal 3, got us back in the game. And so really for us, our identity, we're still trying to see if we can get some secondary scoring. Our best players played and carried us a little bit offensively. And then we had a really good defensive posture where guys went out and competed when we didn't have the puck. And if we can continue those things while still polishing up our power play wasn't exactly what it needs to be, but our penalty killing was. We scored 1 power play goal on the weekend, and it ended up being a game winner on Saturday. And we're just going to have to continue to build as we go on. But I like our start. I'm excited about this weekend because I think if we have some cracks in our foundation, St. Cloud's good enough to expose them.
When you name somebody Dryden, what are the odds that he's going to live up to those expectations?
Yeah, I can tell you this. When he shared the story, about Ken Dryden and why he was named Dryden, you can't make it up, right? Now the young man, and I wish wishes he was probably the size of Ken Dryden. That's the only thing that I can tell you. And again, he doesn't get to control that. But for him to have the demeanor and just be a guy that you like to see at the rink every day, and not a lot of, hockey a bit, and most goaltenders aren't the most normal human beings that you run into on a daily basis.
Yes, that is 100% accurate.
And Dryden is. He's somebody that walks into the rink with a smile on his face. If it goes by him, he forgets about it, learns from it, moves on. He's a guy you want to play in front of. And so his demeanor and having that name hung on him at a very early time in life and to live up to what he's doing is pretty special.
Couple more things for you, Mike Hastings, enjoying this conversation. Switched this year to the CCHA. You've been in the WCHA prior to that. What does that mean, do you imagine, to competitive balance and just kind of how you just the opponents you will see this year?
Well, you know what, we know the relationships that we've had with the teams that are coming from the old WCHA to now the CCHA. I think our league has continued to garner depth and get better as a whole. You're starting to see that when our teams go to the NCAA tournament. You see Bemidji, who's going to be very difficult out again this year, and the job that Tom Serratori does at Bemidji, and the excitement of what's going on at St. Thomas, and it won't take them long to get rolling. Another Minnesota guy, Ty Eidner, who's coaching at Bowling Green, and what's going on at Michigan Tech. You're seeing teams, even this last weekend, with us going out to UMass and Lake Superior State going into UNO and winning a game on the road, and Ferris State beating Miami, two teams in the NCHC. We just need to keep getting better. And I think we've done that over the attrition of us now having the 8 that we have together, combined with new leadership. Don Lucia is our commissioner. It's great to be able to talk to somebody that sat in the seat that I'm sitting in, as well as our other coaches. And for him to do it at the different levels that he did. He ended up at University of Minnesota, but prior to that, he was at Colorado College, he was at Fairbanks, and he was at universities that, if you look in a mirror, some of our universities mirror that, where it isn't Division I across the board. So when you have leadership like that and investment and commitment from the universities that we have right now, I think our future is very bright. Hopefully we can maintain the start that we have this year on the ice. But I also am very excited about what you see and how we are viewed because of the leadership that we have now in Don Lucia and his staff.
You mentioned St. Thomas, and I was going to ask you about that. One more Division I team in the state to recruit against, to compete against. Some of the, there's been tons of success. Obviously, this is the state of hockey. There's, a lot of quality programs. Sometimes the Gophers cast a too large shadow over the rest of them, and I may be guilty of focusing on them more than some of the others, but just maybe assessing the state as a whole and St. Thomas's arrival specifically, how do you view now the landscape that you see before you in Minnesota?
Well, it's a great question. I will say this, I consider all the programs and the individuals that are the head coaches right now in those programs, we've grown up together. Tommy Serratori and myself worked together at St. Cloud State. When I first arrived on campus at St. Cloud as a student athlete, Bobby Motzko was working with Herb Brooks. Scott Sandelin, his son Ryan, plays for our program. When you start talking about that, you've got Brett Larson, who obviously is doing a heck of a job at St. Cloud. Our representation last year at the Frozen Four as a state. When you start talking about the product on the ice, and then I think the quality of people that are in the programs that we have within the state. We should all be incredibly proud about that. And for us to add, one of Herb's visions was trying to provide more opportunities for young people in our state to play Division I hockey. And, when this started, you didn't have St. Cloud in the league. You didn't have Bemidji. You didn't have MSU. You didn't have Minnesota State. You didn't have St. Thomas. And so I have to believe Herb's smiling right now with what is within our borders. And it just continues to get better. So I think anytime you can, within your footprint, you can drive to an area and compete and have your fans travel, have their fans travel, and be a part of, the state of hockey. Us, Hockey Day in Minnesota, we get an opportunity to host that this year. We're incredibly excited about it because I think it's just a showcase of what we're talking about being a part of the state of hockey and what the game really means to our state.
Love that answer. Enjoyed this conversation with you, Mike Hastings, head coach, Minnesota State men's hockey. It's going to be a good one this weekend. Enjoy it. Enjoy those two games. Enjoy kind of the early season as you kind of figure out what this team is all about, and hopefully playing deep into March and April as well.
Thanks, Michael. I appreciate you having me on.
Really enjoyed that conversation with Mike Hastings. Appreciate him coming on the show. Should be fun down in Mankato. If you're down there, let me know how things were. I'm sure that building will be rocking as fans return for number 1 against number 2 in the country. That will do it for today. Should have some good stuff coming up next week. Wild season about to start. Plenty of good preseason action going on. Vikings against the Lions. Man, if they lose, Monday's show is going to be unbelievable. If they win, it'll still be great. Thanks for listening all week. Ladies and gentlemen, the weekend.